Hello, I'm Chris Hartwell, and welcome to the Heartbeat. Today we're going to be talking about episode 7 of season 1 of HBO's Westworld. Join me, won't you? So, it was Lawrence, Dolores, and William's storyline this week that presented both in word and in image kind of the unifying idea of the episode, and really what we could expect from each of the individual plot lines. Indeed, it was clear that when Lawrence said, "Nothing from here on out but slaughter," the writers were making a promise that would not only apply to his future, but everyone's in Westworld. And the image that really pulled together all these disparate narratives was that of the lifeless, flag-bearing host whose seemingly harmless body ultimately erupted into something extremely destructive. And moments like that played up and down this entire episode like a single melody being played at different octaves on a piano. So, to start with, of course, we had our heroes entering a place called Ghost Nation territory, which, as it turned out, wasn't filled with harmless, formless spirits, as its name suggested, but very corporal and very destructive machines that ended up wiping out nearly all of our heroes' companions and certainly played a part in Lawrence's decision to go his separate way. And though it was small, there was indeed an ignition that took place within William as he at long last broke free from who and what he had been his entire life. And I should mention here as well, though I am still rather dubious that William will turn out to be a young man in black, his musings this week, specifically this place, it's like I woke up inside of one of those stories. I guess I just want to find out what it means. Really did sound a whole lot like the Man in Black. And I enjoyed too how William referred to his life in the outside world having been built on pretending, as it both connected him to Dolores and her fabricated existence, as well as only continued to blur the lines between what occurred inside Westworld and outside Westworld, and just how captivating it was on the inside, to the point where existence in the real world felt fake, and existence in this fake world felt real. And just how lost William had become in this Westworld was made all the more apparent in Dolores' contradictory and much more grounded desire not to be in a story, always looking forwards and back, but instead just being in the moment that she was in. Which in a way had been true of her oblivious existence up until then, but unfortunately that existence and that moment that she had been in had been frozen, like that nitroglycerin-filled host just lifelessly stuck in one place. Which was what made her continued movement forwards this week all the more impactful. There was still so much to unlock inside her, thoughts and images, each full of explosive possibilities. Clementine, on the other hand, remained stuck in her loop, against her will frozen in that saloon and then forced to erupt backstage as she was made a part of some phony demonstration that ultimately led to her lobotomizing. And present for two of those moments was Maeve, each time rooted to the spot, unable to intervene or do anything but just stare in horror and sadness. But just like she walked into that saloon and slammed shut that player piano, Maeve was so done with her loop, and ready to do more than just stare, ready to do more than just grip that knife, ready to erupt. Of course, the most explosive reveal this week was that Bernard was in fact one of Ford's creations as well. And really more than any other character, he was the perfect example of a seemingly harmless, utterly docile, and completely human character erupting into something different, which really made the reveal that much more dynamite. And it definitely wasn't something that the writers cheaply blindsided us with either, as they undeniably gave us a number of clues leading up to the revelation, especially in this episode, that Bernard was in fact a host. And one of the more overt of those clues occurred in the opening scene when Bernard awoke not only in a similar position to how Dolores and Maeve had at the top of their programmed loops, but was also guided into consciousness by his son's words, "Wake up," which were identical to the bicameral whisperings in Dolores' mind. And to reflect on the pilot episode and how in its first 15 minutes the most identifiable and human character was Teddy, an individual who obviously turned out not to be human at all, it really felt so natural that the show would take arguably its most empathetic and identifiable character and reveal him to be yet another robot. And the episode maintained our connection to Bernard all the way up until the end, showing us, for example, just how much Bernard hated lying to Teresa, even as she had been so ugly to him. He was a good man, and we saw him as a man, which, when he was revealed not to be, once again forced us to consider what does it mean to be a man, especially when mankind continued to be far more despicable than any of the androids, Miss Hale being the newest on a long list of examples. But not only did her complete disregard for the individuals that worked at Westworld reveal who Charlotte was, it also gave us a better understanding of Delos and their desire for Westworld's code, which would be, or is already being used for, their little research project. And from Ford's statement that, I simply wanted to tell my stories, it was you people who wanted to play God, I can only guess that Delos' little research project is something well beyond Westworld itself, and will likely involve bringing android technology into the outside world. Speaking of Ford, though, one of the most fantastically taut moments of the entire episode was when Miss Hale thrust her knife at the park's creator, attacking something that he held very dear, Bernard. Just watching how Anthony Hopkins played that scene, his face perfectly and I'm sure intentionally ambiguous throughout was completely captivating. Was he in shock or enraged or a combination of the two? Whatever the case, the scene just gave us the feeling that that man, like that nitroglycerin-filled android, was ready to explode, annihilating all in his path. And even though in that moment I didn't yet know who would ultimately be scorched by the flames of his fury, I absolutely knew that Clementine wouldn't be the only blood sacrifice this week. The slaughter would continue and real blood would be spilt. And when Ford completely dodged Therese's accusation that he had had his partner killed, I really began to wonder just how much blood had already been shed to keep those men's dream alive. And even while Ford's quoting of Hamlet seemed to imply there remained within him some conflict over his chosen course of action, one of the episode's closing images, literally showing creation happening in the same frame as death, only solidified Ford's worldview and ideology. That being, life grows out of death. And for this world to continue, blood must be spilled. So, as interesting as it is to wonder what Delos' plans for the future are, it's almost more exciting to hypothesize what Ford wants to do with his creation. And now that we're just 3 episodes away from the season's end, I have begun to wonder, will the writers be able to avoid looping his story, where Ford witnesses yet another android uprising, or can the writers, like they have already promised, avoid a retrospective? And considering that Michael Crichton conceived of both Westworld and Jurassic Park, I do feel justified in my concern, small though it is, that subsequent seasons of the former may vary narratively as little as the subsequent sequels of the latter. I want to, along with Maeve, eventually break free from this park. And no, I'm not saying that this has to happen in Season 2 or even necessarily in Season 3. I just know that one day I will, like Clementine, long for someplace different. Those are my thoughts anyways on this week's episode of Westworld. I would love to know what you guys thought of the episode, so definitely comment below and let me know. Did you find the reveal that Bernard was an android to be satisfying and teed up well? Are there any other twists and turns that you're hoping will come to pass in the next 3 episodes? Definitely comment below and let me know. Also, I must give a very special shout out to Riley, a new patron of mine over on patreon.com. I really can't express fully, Riley, how much it means to me that you pledge your hard-earned dollars to this channel, so I will just say this: I will continue to do my darndest to create content that is exciting, entertaining, and edifying. And finally, to the rest of you, please do subscribe. I'm going to continue to review films and television on this channel, and I would love for you to stay up to date on all of those things. But for now, I'm Chris Hartwell. This is The Heartbeat. Thank you for joining me.